The Shinju burst into the Boruto scene as one of the most unexpected revelations in the series thus far. Going into the timeskip, nobody expected a threat of such magnitude to appear from basically out of nowhere. And most of us assumed going into it that Two Blue Vortex would primarily focus on the conflict between Boruto and Kawaki. But instead, the threat of the Shinju is so large that Kawaki, the guy who seeks nothing but blood, was able to put this aside in order to deal with the world-ending threat. So in this video, I'm going to try and explain how I believe the Shinju are created, as well as how they actually function, and maybe some hidden abilities that these creatures may have that we aren't aware of yet. But before we get into that, if you do end up enjoying today's video, then please consider hitting the like button just so this video gets pushed out to more and more people. And if you do want to support the channel, then subscribing is your best way of doing that. Anyways, with that said, let's get into this video. So first off, I need to go over what the claw grime even are in the first place. After Code got his limiters removed from Amado, he went back to the Ten Tails realm, where Jougan was previously holding a fully sized Ten Tails. Code then described a bug that previously, due to the limiters that were placed on him, he was not able to produce enough claw marks to wrap around the entire Ten Tails many times. However, with these limiters now being rescinded, Code decided that by basically cutting up the Ten Tails by literally squeezing it apart using his claw marks, he could mold this into mini Ten Tail chunks, which end up being smaller versions of the bigger thing. The way it's described is the Ten Tails itself is just a lump of clay. And if you think about it in terms of a real world analogy, making a pot with a massive lump of clay would be possible, but not only would it be difficult to use, but one pot is less effective than using the same clay to make lots of different pots. And the Ten Tails, if it is a singular body, is still strong, and much stronger than a single claw grime would be. But when it comes to a battle, fighting one massive entity is far easier than fighting tons of smaller ones, just because of how the shinobis tend to fight. However, these claw grimes are still just an amalgamation of densely packed chakra, which inadvertently meant that these claw grimes were still incapable of a conscience. And this is why we see them acting purely off the Ten Tails instincts, which is to consume Otsutsuki in order to cultivate a chakra tree. However, it seemed like the claw grimes weren't specifically targeting Otsutsuki anymore, and instead some of them targeted normal humans. Now the Ten Tails wasn't coded in this way, or it wasn't a natural instinct of this creature to go seek out normal humans. So this kind of leads me to believe that this is something to do with Code's claw marks. Obviously this dumbass didn't know what he was doing, as it obviously led to the Shinju awakening, which I'm sure he didn't plan to happen. But I think the reason that these claw grimes even exist comes down to the composition of the claw marks itself. Code's claw marks are made up of chakra along with the iron inside of his blood, which means that it cannot be absorbed by the karma or any ninjutsu absorption, because it isn't just a chakra based technique. However, Kawaki can shrink the claw marks, meaning that they aren't a living entity either, and rather an in-between of the two. So by imbuing Ten Tails itself with the claw marks, rather than becoming a living entity with a conscience like the Shinju, or remaining as a brainless entity only capable of reacting off its instincts, the claw grimes become a slightly more developed version of the Ten Tails itself. Hence why it has the intelligence to use the claw marks and also have targets other than the Otsutsuki. But then the question becomes, how do we get from a simple claw grime to a Shinju? Well, that is the main mystery that we're trying to uncover in this video. So the slightly more confusing part about this is why certain people are consumed by a claw grime, turned into a tree, but then don't become a Shinju. But I think there's actually an explanation behind this, and it comes down to the moment when a person is consumed by a claw grime. As if we think back to Sasuke, for example, when he was fighting Code, Boruto seemingly made a mistake that meant Sasuke had to sacrifice himself in order to save Boruto. And I think it was a case of Boruto tried to use his karma here, but that's besides the point. What matters is that at that moment when Sasuke became a tree, he was trying to save Boruto. And also think back to Shinki. In order to save Gaara, he sacrificed himself, and in that moment of self-sacrifice, he was consumed by a claw grime. Then also, it was stated that Moegi was trying to save a mother and a child at the moment when she was consumed by a claw grime as well and turned into a tree. Now it's pretty obvious here what I'm getting at, as there seems to be a correlation between sacrificing yourself when consumed by a claw grime and then turning into a Shinju itself. And I think what makes this even more concrete is the fact that the writers intentionally wrote in the part that Moegi tried to save someone when she was turned into a tree. Now that wasn't even remotely important to the situation when Konohamaru arrived, but the fact that it's written in there has to show that we are correct in assuming that there is a correlation between these two things. And I think I have a pretty solid idea on what this correlation could be. So a theme in Naruto that was obviously carried over into Boruto was the idea that chakra is separated into two parts. Yin chakra, which is spiritual energy of a person, and yang chakra, which is the physical energy. Now yin chakra is often glossed over because the big flashy attacks all stem from a person's yang chakra. But something that's seeded inside of all Uchiha is the fact that their body can react and have certain awakenings as a result of their yin chakra. And this is why they're able to undergo ocular awakenings and why this is intertwined into their emotional state at the time. Because when they undergo something where they are extremely emotional, like for most Uchiha losing a loved one, there is a surge in yin chakra or spiritual energy which causes them to undergo such awakenings in that moment. And the fact that this isn't just witnessing the death of a loved one or seeking revenge which causes this awakening was shown inside of Sarada, where it was instead her love for Boruto which caused her Mangekyo Sharingan to awaken, which is a discussion for an entirely different video, but essentially this moment showcases that yin chakra will course through a person's body at a moment where their emotional state is at a heightened status. So going back to the root of the 10 tails, it at its very core is a ball of yang chakra or physical energy. This is why it isn't capable of emotions or a conscience or other human qualities, because it simply lacks yin chakra. However, now we have slightly developed the 10 tails into clawgrams using code's claw marks. These clawgrams are now a step along in the development to becoming human-like than the 10 tails was. So now when you combine the yin chakra of the user that is consumed with the clawgram, that is what causes a Shinju at a very simple level. However, going slightly deeper, the reason not everyone that becomes a tree becomes a Shinju is because their yin chakra is not high enough at the moment of consumption, where the clawgram and the user's chakra become one. And I would say that's the best way of describing the treeification process, where the user and the clawgram's chakra literally become one in that moment. And all of this is sent back to the main 10 tails body, which then creates a thorn soul. But only certain thorn souls can actually be cultivated into an actual Shinju. And Jura is the one who determines which thorn souls should be harvested, as he was hesitant for Matsuri to harvest a thorn soul which ended up turning into Ryu. But linking this back to the moment of sacrifice, it doesn't just have to be a person sacrificing themselves. And you will notice that I left out Bug when I described who sacrificed himself during the time of getting consumed, because Bug simply couldn't have been sacrificing himself to save anyone, as not only would Bug not do this for Code, but Bug became a tree during the time where Code attacked Konoha, as when Code returned to the 10 tails dimension, he was shocked to see that Bug had turned into a tree, and there wasn't anyone else in this dimension beside the clawgram that Bug could have been saving, which therefore means that there must be something else that causes Bug's yin chakra to be so high in the moment of being consumed. And I think this comes down to Eida's charm ability. We know from Sarada that love is another way to cause someone to have a massive surge in yin chakra. And what we also know is Eida's charm ability has varying effects on different people. Bug was clearly shown to have been affected quite substantially by this charm effect. And we saw from Code this effect just doesn't go away when Eida isn't about. People caught in the charm ability are unable to get out of it. And because Bug was so heavily affected by Eida, his yin chakra or his love for Eida was always in a heightened state. Or on the other hand, my guy might have been getting devious in his own time in that dimension. Either way, in Bug's case, his yin chakra was high because of love, which actually makes a lot of sense. However, this yin chakra thing goes a step further, where the level of consciousness the 10 tails has developed is varying from Shinju to Shinju. And once again, this comes down to the amount of yin chakra in a person's body at the time of consumption. So Hidari is shown many times to be the odd one out, where his consciousness compared to the other Shinju seems to be lacking, which Matsuri has picked up on a few times. But this actually makes a lot of sense if we think back to why Sasuke sacrificed himself for Boruto. The only reason Sasuke agreed to help Boruto was because of the belief he had in his daughter Sarada. But despite this, the effects of omnipotence would still be having a constant effect on Sasuke's mind, where despite him wanting to believe Sarada, there was still a massive level of doubt that he couldn't shake due to the ability of omnipotence. Hence, even when he was sacrificing himself, there must have still been a lot of doubt as to whether what he was doing was correct, which may inadvertently lowered the yin chakra inside of his body at that time. With Sarada and Sasuke being the last Uchiha left in the series, perhaps there is a link between the effects of Eida's charm or omnipotence ability, where due to their high control or amount of yin chakra, especially in Sarada's case, they can control it enough to withstand the omnipotence effect. However, I am going slightly off track here. Essentially, the reason Hidari is almost like a lesser Shinju, not necessarily in terms of power because they all have the same amount of 10 tails power, which I will go into in a second, but because of that uncertainty in his mind and the lower amount of yin chakra, his consciousness as a Shinju is going to be less than others. On the other hand, Moegi, I would say, has a medium level of yin chakra, as she was just saving a mother and a child, which is her duty as a shinobi, but she had no emotional ties to either of these people, which compared to the next person here, her yin chakra wouldn't have been so high, and also maybe why she's unable to withstand or overcome the effects of love around Konohamaru. Shinki or Ryu, on the other hand, was literally saving his father or his stepfather at the moment of being consumed, which in my eyes means that he had the largest amount of yin chakra when he was being consumed compared to all of the other Shinju. And this is also reflected when it comes to how he was able to deceive Konoha's strike squad, by putting on this facade that he was some stupid entity that they could trick. Mamushi we definitely haven't seen enough of, but his levels of consciousness will come down to how down bad he was for Eida. And Jura, well, that guy is still an unknown, and if you want me to go further into specifically Jura, then you have to let me know it in the comments down below. That is something that you want to see in the future. And just a quick side note, remember the claw grind which had a Rinnegan? Perhaps that was almost a stage 1 of a Shinju, where perhaps yin chakra of its host wasn't quite enough for it to become a fully functional Shinju, but it was enough to give it some basic aspects of speech and some extra power. And finally, I want to discuss the Shinju's hidden ability, which is to control the claw grinds or the roots of the Ten Tails. We saw that Jura was able to remotely move Hidari's Thorn Soul, and also Matsuri was able to do the same as well as control the roots of the Ten Tails in their hideout. Hidari, similarly to Matsuri, was able to drag out the roots to rejuvenate himself after being hit by Sarada's Chidori, and I think it's safe to assume that the rest of the Shinju probably have that same ability. Also, in chapter 8, I think it was in 2 Blue Vortex, there seemed to be a claw grime who was running towards Konoha seemingly on its own fruition, but Jura also seemed to know the exact whereabouts of this claw grime's location, as well as where it was heading. This to me makes me think that Jura was controlling this claw grime to give him an entryway to Konoha without using one of the claw marks in the village itself, which probably have either all been removed by Kawaki or are being guarded by shinobi. Regardless, I think this ability is as a result of the Shinju originating from the Ten Tails, and the Ten Tails, like I keep describing, is just like clay, where you can mold it into whatever shape you need it to be. Which means that since the Ten Tails was literally shown to be able to change its shape in the 4th Great Ninja War, it means that the Shinju, since they have their own consciousness and stem from this entity, they can both control the claw grime, which are technically slightly developed Ten Tails, as well as the Ten Tails itself, which may also tie into why we saw the Ten Tails disappear in chapter 4, but I think I've already gone far too in depth, so I think I can stop here when it comes to explaining how these Shinju actually work. And with that said, that is going to be a wrap for this video. As always, make sure to let me know anything you want to add, disagree with, or anything you saw that you liked in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoyed this, then make sure to smash the like button just so this video gets pushed out to more and more people. And if you want to help support this channel and want to see more Boruto content like this, then subscribing is the best way to do both. And with me uploading every day in February, you won't miss when a new video drops. But with that all said, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.